Welcome back. Just a single season of playing rugby may reduce blood flow to the brain and affect cognitive ability. A new study from the University of South Wales studied members of a professional squad, which yielded some shocking results. It also suggests that repetitive contact events, rather than only concussions, caused the declines seen in the players. Last year, 8 former players with early onset dementia launched legal action against World Rugby, saying their careers made them sick. All of them are under 45 years old. Jon Patricio is a professor of sports and exercise medicine at Wits. He joins us now for more on this. Jon, thank you so much for your time. Concussion is a word we hear often, and I think a lot of us just assume we understand what it is. But explain to us very briefly what it is and what the long-term effects of repeated concussions are.
Good morning to you. Concussion is a traumatic brain injury as a result of a direct or indirect blow to the head, which affects the brain, and this results in functional changes to the brain. And that's important because the word function implies that the way the brain operates changes. It's not necessarily the visible structure of the brain that's affected, and hence it's a bit mysterious because it's been very difficult for years to be able to determine the extent of potential changes in the brain because we can't see them. There's no visible wound. And so we rely on measures of change in various aspects of bodily function. So that might be physical symptoms, emotional, the way we think, as this study investigated, the way we sleep, etc. And it can affect any aspects of brain function.
The study points to not just concussion, but repeated contact events. What's your initial reaction to the findings?
So firstly, this is an area of massive research at the moment, and this was conducted in rugby, and certainly it's a priority area for World Rugby to look at both the short-term and long-term effects of head injury and repetitive impact. I think we welcome research like this. It was a physiological study that was conducted that looked at blood flow, and it looked at the effects of cognition, or how the players were able to think, comparing findings at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the season. So we certainly welcome that sort of research. However, I think we've got to be careful about reading too much into a single study that looks at a small cohort. In other words, this really looked at 21 players over one season. And what we really need, and what is taking place, hopefully, are a series of studies that look at large numbers of players over a long period. So if we look at the findings of the study, what they showed was that these repetitive impacts and the 6 concussions they measured had a small effect on the way those players were able to think. So they used a particular score of cognition, which scores out of 30, and those players scored an average of 28 out of 30 at the beginning of the season and 27 out of 30 at the end. So there was a small change. And we have to take it seriously, but we've got to be careful about not reading too much into a single study. So this is the type of study that will lead to further research with greater numbers that will really give us much more robust information to make us, allow us to make decisions around the game of rugby and all contact and collision sports, because it's very important to realize that these incidents take place in equestrian events, people that ride horses, motor racing, cycling, etc. So it's of significance to a wide range of sports as well.
Yeah. Jon, one of the areas of the study focuses on something that I think our rugby team is famous for. Could we see a change in terms of substitutes coming on fresh for big hits like the Springbok bomb squad is famous for? Is that something that's set to change?
So I think, to their credit, World Rugby are really quite flexible in terms of looking at evidence-based change. And the suggestion is that having big 120-kilogram forwards coming off the bench for the last 20 or 30 minutes of a game might just provide the impetus that leads to greater numbers of concussions and higher levels of head injury. So I think if the research supports that, they may well look at that change and rather have the 15 players staying on the field and only being substituted for injury. So I can't speak for World Rugby, but I'm sure it's something that they might entertain.
Prof, I actually asked Tapfuma if I could chime in here for my own selfish reasons, but I've got an 8-year-old little boy and he really wants to start rugby, and it's not touch, it's
full contact.
Full contact rugby. And I'm a little bit worried about it. Is there anything that I should do to make sure that he's okay without being a tiger mum on the side of the field? And would you recommend that a little kid of 8 starts playing full contact rugby?
So I think the flip side to studies like this is that there's other research that shows that rugby players live longer, healthier lives. And participation in team sports, including contact and collision sports, actually can be hugely beneficial. So around the world, but particularly in South Africa, we can be very proud of having a network of clinicians and scientists that look specifically into rugby safety. And there's a program called Box Smart run by SA Rugby that looks after boys like yours and trains coaches and referees to improve the safety of the game. And in fact, in this country, it's absolutely compulsory that anyone that coaches or referees the game, it doesn't matter whether it's under 8s or it's an international game, has to every 2 years undergo this Box Smart course. And the main focus of the course is on head and neck injuries. And so we can take some comfort that coaches and referees are aware of concussion, how to recognize it and how to manage it. And then a step further than that, looking at ways of preventing injury. And that is by coaching good technique. So the questions you should be asking your coaches and teachers: have you done the Box Smart course? Are you aware of concussion and how to manage it? Are you aware of how to coach tackle technique to help prevent injury for both the tackler and the person being tackled? And what has your school or club put in place to help support players who might suffer from concussion? And I encourage everybody at community level to put a network in place that creates a better safety net around the game, by which I mean you should have doctors and support medical staff available, if not on the side of the field, certainly on call to be able to manage these. Because the research shows that those concussions that are recognized early and managed early do better. And those are the ones that are less likely to have long-term sequelae.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for putting my friend here at ease. My mom was the same. She wouldn't let me play rugby. I had to play rugby on the sly. So at least Annika's son is going to get to play. Professor Jon Patricio is a sports physician and consultant. He's with Wits University. Thank you so much for joining us.